All right, what's going on, guys? So we're gonna go over the trades, the review from basically today. There wasn't really anything too much on my radar from today. Obviously, we lost what would be Friday into Monday's new weekly opening gap print, which would be the little gap here between these two candles. So I was looking for basically a reversal and a retest into that area, right? So that area being, let's lighten up this rectangle here, that area being from here to here, right? And why is that? Is because we're at the very bottom of this gap, right, where a support should ideally hold off of. Um, and if you take a look at the 15, you're going to be able to see how we were kind of just basing there throughout the remainder of the trading session. So we didn't quite get up to where I wanted to get up to test up into what I would say would be like, okay, take a look at swing low, swing high, equilibrium. Um, obviously, obviously the S&P saw a little bit more of a move just because of financials and obviously the financials report. If you go over to the sectors, you'll be able to see how there was a lot of different, obviously you see these financials are really nicely moving. You see industrials are moving nicely. A lot of these names are moving very, very, very nicely. So um, when you're looking at the broader perspective of sector by sector, I guess you could say the better alongside trade today was a alongside trade on the S&P itself. Um, so yeah, that's why we didn't really get there with QQQ. So now let's go into some of the trades that I took today. One of those being Marvel rolls, right? So when we're looking at this and we're looking for the expansion outside of this range, it's holding the confines of this bull gap. This is the top of the earnings gap technically all the way up here, right? I don't think a lot of people understand that this is the opening of the next following trading session. And it's kind of tying in with this previous resistance that's sitting over here. So there's a few areas of confluence, and I'm basically just looking for a sign of strength above the range and above the upper extremes ever since we had the failed breakout that left behind bear gap. So we would be looking for a break, a retest, and a simple go a little bit higher, something that looks like this. If you go into the replay mode and you take a look from here, and boom, you get your expansion candle. That's whenever I would start looking for here, here, and here for the entirety of the gap fill up into what would be 85 bucks. So I'm still holding those. We'll see what those kind of do. Opportunity to really roll profit today was really nice off of the opening, risking the previous day low. Uh, let's get rid of everything in here except for this. So yeah, as you guys can see, the orb was established right off of the beginning of the trading day. You could actually get rid of this and push this line up a little bit more now because this is not technically the gap. The gap is now just simple previous trading session high, previous trading session low. If you want to take a look at your two EMAs, they're a little bit behind. However, we can get really nice expansion immediately. You're also getting your 50 and 200 crossing. Not that I really care about that, but yeah, this is a really nice profit roll, and I'm going to keep my eye on this as long as we stay um, above this level here, essentially above today's session low. So let's go into the next one, SQ. No, I didn't take SQ today. Roku, this was just a few contracts, and I fell for this move off the open, and then I looked for a potential retest and a hold of what would be the previous trading session's close, right? So it was basically this little area and a little bit lower, which was also the top of this gap over here. And I was looking to see if we could catch some momentum off the open, although I was very aware that this was a very high volume sweep. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to risk what would be like previous trading session low close or like 78.61, and I only had a few contracts here because the contract's really spready and I couldn't get any fill, nor did I want any big fill on this off the open. It was more or less just testing the waters. So this broke through the level and I cut it for like a 22% loss. Not the biggest deal in the world. Definitely was not prepared this morning. So yeah, that with that being said, that would be that one. SMCI. So I didn't really have a lot of expectations for this one either. These are just kind of testing the water type of trades, guys. I mean, I've already made my week with the whole Marvel chart and Marvel swing. And then I rolled some profit successfully over into like Snow yesterday and CrowdStrike today, as well as yesterday. And those have been nice little base hits that have kind of just been adding on top of this Marvel win that sets up my week. However, when we're looking over at something like um, SMCI, it's definitely a speculative looking trade up until you get a claim over this massive liquidation candle that's on the hourly chart, right? I mean, you're looking at this over here, and this is really minimal gap up followed by a major knife on a lot of volume, right? And the volume actually did dry up into the split, and they sold it off actually into the split, and then they sold it off again on a fake breakout over the resistance above this liquidation little candle over here, right? I believe this was news, so this candle over here being on relatively high, I mean, very high volume relative to the rest of the hourly range, and almost the same volume as this news candle over here is pretty big. And then ever since then, what we had was two trading sessions that were kind of just sitting within the confines of this major candle that looked like really, really, really bearish, right? So I figured they were absorbing the general range and then they were going to obviously reclaim this previous swing low support, as well as the upper range of this gap down mother candle, and then obviously send it higher and potentially try and base this candle high. And then once we do that, we would look for a further dig into the gap, and it could be a really nice risk to reward trade. However, the risk has to be tight because we're not getting the confirmation of this being able to get over that, right? So whenever I was looking at this today, I saw the opening, I saw this kind of support forming out here towards this bottom. If you take a look at the hourly doesn't look too bad at all on this. And I basically just waited for this thing to start to catch some momentum, and that momentum being above the opening print. Obviously on a lot of volume that poured into the name, and then I sized in on this candle, risking the orb. Okay. However, I had really tight stops once we got and creeped up into that high. Obviously, the high failed, so I stopped out on the retest down here, something like this. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to get back in one more time and see if this thing can start pushing that high. Obviously, this is all speculative size, so it's not anything too big of my concern here. I'm simply just risking what would be like the orb range, right? So it would be like this little mini breakout area, as well as the previous trading session high, right? So right over here. And as you guys can see on the previous trading session high, actually what happened was we were actually using this zone of where the previous trading session high was at as kind of like a little support as well, right? So that's basically all I was using, and it started to get its little move higher, and then it sold off again into the close, and I stopped on a stop break even order that I already had set. So yeah, those two trades were just two trades that really test the waters. I mean, I was up like 20% up here. I was up like 30% over here. Two trades that I don't really care about scaling, and I will be watching SMCI into tomorrow. And the fact that it's digesting up here a little bit more just gives me a little bit more conviction and confidence to be able to take more of a full-size trade on this if it starts to look really nice. If not, no biggie. If so, amazing. I think it can really, really, really see some quick upside. I wouldn't be surprised if this pulled back a little bit, shook a little bit more people out, and then went. However, this range up here is very, very big to base, and I was also basing this trade off of the weekly print itself, right, or the daily print. So if we were to, get a really nice strong close above the next following day, hold the opening print or retest ever so slightly, and then move our ways higher, then that'd be a very easy trade to take up into a 55 target. Didn't work out today, but I'll keep an eye on it tomorrow. Let's go into oh, CRWD. Okay, yeah. So I've been talking about CRWD a lot, and this has been one of my favorite focuses in terms of really, really nice relief reversion type of trade. I talk a lot about the reversion based type of setup and how this was basically failing what looks to be a previous major weekly support that turned into a short-term weekly resistance as well as right off of this gap, right? So this is my little zone for the time being. And then you go into your daily and you take a look. You're getting your first lower high attempt off of this spot, and then what it does is it's putting in a higher low from the lower high attempt, and then we push um, smooth as butter right through that area of resistance to start looking like we're going to fill some of these gaps. And we actually left this gap unfilled up here, right? So this actually is a gap level. We unfilled it, or we left it unfilled, and then we pulled back on really nice harmonic volume. If you're taking a look from the weekly perspective, this pullback led to a red to green type of week, and on the week of September 30th, where this is now turning into an internal previous lower high attempt that's now turning into a higher low right here, as well as holding this gap level. So just an easy little hammer looking candle above this area. Very simple profit rules whenever we're getting above the next secondary swing highs. So my initial trade on this, just think of it as almost like the same general concept, and I still hold these. Volume got really low here on the retest, so it's not anything that's like too confident for me. However, I would like to see a gap and go tomorrow if this trade were to work. This is just a simple profit roll where you have your bigger, higher time frame level that's sitting right here. And we held that like a champ on the hourly. And if you go into like the 15 or the 5, you had a couple opportunities to be able to buy this off of like what would be the opening print of today's session, where it went from gap up to red, then to green, then flagged on top of that area. So I have some ads within here off of these wicks, also on a reclaim of the level itself. As you guys can see, we obviously had a failure beneath the previous trading session low as well, which is very, very, very important as far as looking for a really nice 3-day continuation series here of 3 different daily candles that lead to a test of a bear gap at the lower extremes of that bear gap, and then obviously the retracement on harmonic volume into where that breakout level was actually sitting at. So I plan to hold these. I'll accept a little bit of drawdown just because I nailed this chart already, so it's not anything too it's not anything that's like too much of my worry, to be honest. Um, so from the weekly perspective, I think that this can be one of them areas where we start to hold these areas as progression. As you guys can see, we also did, like I said, that's a weekly gap as well. And we did hold that with a nice close above into the close as well, right? So if you go into the 15, you're going to be able to see how that was also kind of where the orb high was actually rejecting off of. However, there was not a lot of volume right off of the open. This is not a lot of volume for the open. And then obviously, once we got above that level and actually closed our day up over it, then that's not necessarily such a bad look, right? Given the fact that we've retested this area, and it's our first initial retest, given the fact that this 2-bar series of a sell is basically just sellers mitigating off of the bottom of the gap to then obviously cover and likely the bulls will be in control up until we make obviously probably a new high and close the upper ranges of this gap, right? So I could definitely see CrowdStrike moving up into 337 to like 340 here relatively soon. I would like for this to find just a little bit momentum up into the gap test, to then obviously scale some profits on, because it is just a roll. It's not anything that's like of serious size, and I'm pretty much just not going to be trading any serious size until a new trading week, and we'll see what happens from there. Next, those were all the trades that I actually took. Now let's talk about the trades that are obviously showing some opportunity. I think that this is still within an accumulation, personally. We have a big time weekly level that's sitting over here, right? So when you're looking at this from the weekly perspective, guys, you have a big breakdown retest level up here. We already retested that. And then if you go into the daily, this big retest was actually right into the report, so it makes sense that we marked down. There was not a lot of volume behind the markdown, and now volume is basically just drying up. I do like this chart for upside for our secondary high or low from where the base of accumulation started from, which was down here, into our first high or low, secondary high or low, and then typically on the secondary or third high or low, you get the continuation, right? So something like this. I think that this is going to fill the gap relatively soon. I would love a pullback to start filling some calls. It's not anything that is going to be of big size again. I've already nailed this trade from where the bottom was. And I think, where this thing was actually finding its accumulation off of makes a lot of sense, right? If you guys remember, whenever I knew that news was going to pour in here to Nike soon, I don't know what the news was. I just knew that there was going to be news, given the fact that we are on a big spot within the chart that needed to be filled right after a major markdown from the report. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of where the accumulation was starting from. We got our news, which was a stake from, who was it? I'm so tired, man. I can't remember. What's his name? Oh my gosh. I can't remember his name. He's like that old guy with like gray hair that like invested in Chipotle. Ackman. Ackman is his name, I think. Yeah. Okay. So Ackman got his stake over here, and then they got a new CEO on this gap, and as well as this gap tying in, what else ties in with this? What else ties into this chart other than just this gap? It's the frickin' news gap over here. This is actually the more important gap because it's more recent and it's actually of heavier volume. So this was a beautiful higher low opportunity that we had on our hands over here, and then it got really nice continuation. So I'm going to be looking at basically a little retest of this level, right? So if I could get some sort of little retest of this internal high, with the gap extending from all the way up here into the very upper ranges, which would be up here, I think that this can make up for a really nice risk to reward trade. Keep in mind, guys, this is part of the discretionary consumer discretionary basket that was getting that very clear accumulation, which was off of the McDonald's lows, Starbucks lows, and obviously Nike lows down here, and now Lulu lows. So Lulu is something that I feel like I've already missed, but if you just take a look at the breakdown of this chart and you go into the weekly, we obviously have been majorly underperforming, right? And I still think there could be opportunity on a pullback here. However, I'm not a huge fan anymore now that we're getting these retests. But if I think there's going to be a pullback, and there is a pullback, and that pullback is on harmonic volume to the point where I'm able to obviously create opportunity out of it, then I will trade it. So this is your previous weekly low. We had a fake break beneath that weekly low. If you go into the daily, we were putting in basically weekly higher lows for 3 consecutive weeks of attempts off of where the weekly level was actually reclaimed at. So looking at this from a very simplistic view here, guys, this is just bar by bar, week by week higher lows that are obviously looking for some sort of reversion trade back up into, like, you could pull your weekly moving averages. You could take a look at retests of these weekly levels up here. You could take a look at fibs, if you will. Anything that you really like to do from this bottom end of this chart and paying attention to structure offered a really nice reversion trade. So yeah, this is part of that discretionary basket. If you guys didn't know, what I mean by that would be like McDonald's, like I said, McDonald's, Starbucks, Nike, and this would be another one. So as far as opportunity goes moving forward, there's honestly nothing that I really love. I feel like a lot of these charts are just basically a patience game, a waiting game. I feel like Apple was a really nice opportunity for a short side trade on a swing from yesterday into today. If you guys watched the other video that I did post about it, it was a basically really strong name where you had a short trap down here that was then going to obviously facilitate price off of these two little inside bars that led us into an all-time high. It swept the all-time high, and then it basically just based and based and based and lost the tops of these ranges of this gap over here. It lost the retest through the gap down. And it was basically retesting that into the close off of this triple top resistance. So that's why I didn't really want to trade it, and it went against my rules. If I would have sized in up here on one of these lower highs, which I was actually thinking about doing, then I would have. But my week was already made, so what am I really going to do? And I had a lot of confirmation and conviction with how Marvel was going to behave for me. So that was a beautiful trade. That was a beautiful trade where I don't really have to do much on the week other than prepare for the weeks to come. And that's what I did, right? So there really isn't much more to do in terms of actually like opening options. I feel like a lot of these weekly prints are going to be able to tell us something a little bit more from a wider perspective. Um, as far as other charts go that I do like, Marvel obviously still looks fantastic, right? I mean, we have a really nice chart over here with Marvel. We have other semiconductors that are getting absolutely smoked. You take a look at something like, what would be one? AMD, smoked. NVIDIA, doesn't look very good. Heavy volume sell bar followed by a low, tighter inside bar within the middle of this candle. Not the greatest look. Take a look at something like MU. I'm pretty sure this one has been doing relatively well. Yes, describes the peg that we had. And then you look at other things like LRCX. Awful. Getting drilled. There was a few other ones that I saw that got absolutely hammered. Maybe QCOM. Yeah, not the greatest look. And then you take a look at something like MU, and it's the clean, or I'm sorry, not MU, Marvel, and it's the cleanest looking semi. And it's just basically a SOS off of this accumulation range where we already have had our fake breakdown area, followed by the subsequent structure afterwards. And it's just been a really nice trade opportunity. So, yeah, there's not really much more I can do other than spot these things. SQ has been a really nice one. I'm just writing out my commons. I posted this in the chart and I talked about it for weeks. If you guys don't know basically what I've seen with SQ, it's a similar concept over to Marvel, where you're getting these flat top resistance areas off of what looks to be a previous bull gap that was lost, right? So here, and then obviously the volume dried up with an inside bar. Not technically an inside bar, but as you can see, this is not a weak candle, or not one to really be fading, especially really looking at all of the digestion and all of the consolidation beneath the flat top resistance, with growth stocks looking pretty primed. This one was also kind of lagging behind that PayPal move. So this was really primed for some upside. Very simple chart, just takes some patience, and this saw a really nice smooth multi-day move where you also had opportunity of scaling in on this off of this inside bar on October 11th on Friday. And then we obviously got a really nice 3-day pattern here of continuation up into this previous swing high. If you go to the weekly chart, this is looking like a really nice weekly chart, and we'll see how this one behaves over that 73.36 swing high. I never nailed options too much on this one, so I don't really have profits from a previous trade to play with, which is how I'm handling some other charts. I picked up just a couple contracts, 2 contracts of PANW over here, because I did like the close. However, the fill wasn't really optimal. It's up towards a resistance and earnings candle high. And if you go into the hourly, it was just a really clean hourly flag. If you look at this from the hourly, where you have your previous low, your previous trading session low, or you have your 2 inside bars, and it starts to go, if you take a look at the 15, it just bases there on the 15. It's just basing. It can't do anything like this where it finds a higher low, then pushes beneath, then finds another higher low, or lower high, I'm sorry, and then pushes its way lower for obviously a steeper recorrection. It more or less just sat there with wicks on the hourly and really dried up volume throughout the most of the day. So that's why I picked up a couple contracts into the close, not anything too crazy over there. I also have a couple contracts of CRWDs, so I would say these are not really any dangerous, risky positions. They're more or less just getting nice fills where I think the most optimal entry were to be if this were to see continued upside up into that window of weakness, which would be what's it called? Next week. Sorry, I got a text. So that would be it. That would be just my market outlook as of right now. And as far as some other tech goes, there isn't really anything that's too intriguing for me. Obviously, these aren't really getting the cleanest looks. You do have a previous support over here that was a resistance, and then we pushed through. And I think all AMD is really searching for now is basically a higher low on like a weekly. So if this can put in any sort of internal structure based higher low, that would be a really nice opportunity to base risk off of from a weekly chart. And then I can trade that a little bit higher. And that would be pretty much it. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm also going to filter through some of these lists and take a look and see if I can find anything that makes a lot of structural sense to base risk off of, because I don't think there's really anything. Obviously, we have a lot of noisy charts in a lot of these sectors. We just had some earnings over here in the financial sector, so you don't really want to be trading those. There's really no attractive peg. And then a lot of these are high tight daily flags that are happening over here in industrials, which aren't really my type. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what plays out here soon.